Hi, this is Mjfontaine, and it is the podcast episode 12. It's been a week since I've last podcast because I had a really bad cold and I just couldn't speak. Pardon me. I just couldn't speak at all. I literally lost my voice, which is really funny because I'm doing a podcast. If I'm blogging, normally it wouldn't be so bad, but I'm podcasting, so Houston, we have a problem. Anyway, it's good to be back, and I apologize for not bringing your podcast to you, 'cause that was something. It's been my third cold for since the beginning of 2018, and I've just got to kind of trying to manage and navigate this British weather because we're going from warm to hot to snow back again. I think everywhere there's a lot of extremes of weather, to be honest with you. I know in the West Indies it's been really cold in some parts, which is just unheard of. So there's obviously something going on within our weather, but I think this crazy situation that we're experiencing weather-wise is kind of a reflection with what's happening in the world. And today our topic is activism. And it's really interesting. I'd actually picked this topic before certain things has been happening in the media, and it's so right on point. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have carried as much weight last week than it would today. So let's look at the term activism, because we've had a lot of situations happen in the social media world and the I can't pronounce it, celebrity world. So this is really, really interesting because I've gone off a tangent, but I'll come back. But it's really interesting because activism, to me, I mean, I grew up when we had, a really big, strong socialist party in England and London. We had anti-racist alliance, I think. We had a strong union. I grew up in a place where people marched because of the poll tax was introduced, which is now called the council tax. So when I grew up, there was a lot of marches, a lot of people protesting. There was a lot of activism. I mean, when I first got into working around women and women's health, I was part of a committee where we worked around bringing affordable complementary therapies to women in Stratford. And so the Women's Health Centre in Stratford was really strong in, activism in terms of healthcare for women, women having access to, we had a free library that they could have access to different books. Plus we had a creche. We was really heavily, linked and did a lot of work with Asian Women's Project. I think one of the workers was on a committee of the New Asian Women's Project as well. So we was quite, it was quite a time where we was mixed with a lot of different things. I can't say that I'm a really strong activist, but I know a lot of people that have been fighting a cause for a long time, and they continue to. And they're the people that actually hold up the communities, And I think it's really important that they are there, our activists, because what would we do? But let's look at the actual word of meaning. Activism, the policy or action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political or social change. Growing activism, for example, on the abortion issue. I mean, that's the example they've got. This is dictionary I've looked at online because nobody uses books anymore. So if we, so that is a definition. That's one of the definitions. The reason why I do that is because sometimes when I teach, I really like to pull up the Oxford and the Collins meanings, and then I have a discussion with my groups because I think it's really important. So, Oxford Dictionary, they've actually broken it down, which is why you've got to be careful with Google, pick up a book. The policy of action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political, social change, but they also have examples of cultural activism as well. So you've got different types of activism. Cultural, again, it's trying to bring about who engages in cultural activism. It says it does on the packet. But then, we look at activists, we look at civil rights activists, we look at pro-life activists, we look at social activists, we look at community activists, and and then we have those people who actually did the work, that marched, they really campaigned. And then we have different people that kind of campaign online for data protection activists, people that actually try and campaign for civil liberty. That's the word. So what I want to actually talk about is a couple of things that's happened. So we have a situation in social media where a social media guru, so-called guru, or really well-known person in the social media world that I myself used to follow. I'm not going to say the person's name. I myself used to follow years ago. I stopped following this person quite a while back, but I was still getting their newsletters. Pardon me. And I was seeing their new program that they had on. So they had a program on, and they were very much looking at, in this program, it's a year-long program, but the images they had used were deemed, and were actually not even deemed, culturally inappropriate. And I got into this really late, so I cannot explain the whole situation because I came into it late. I'm not going to misquote anybody, but from what I can gather is that women of colour called this person out and said, these images are, then they're culturally inappropriate or insensitive. And apparently the response back was not met in a way that the women that were calling her out felt it was a real response. They felt like the person was defending themselves and gaslighting the situation without actually being accountable. So it's about accountability, and so it caused a big, massive upheaval, basically, and a disappointment actually, because a lot of, especially women of colour in the coaching industry, the personal development industry, they actually wanted, if someone's investing their time in you or your newsletter, following you, you actually want that person to kind of see you. And I think that's a major thing for women of colour, is the fact that sometimes, with a lot of the times within this whole situation, we actually sometimes feel passed, ignored, not considered, and we're continuously having to tell the world, look, this is how we want to be treated. This is what we expect. But there's a a disconnect, because we become accused of angry black woman or angry Asian woman, you know, and so we become caustic. We can't be in a place to be soft for so long, because we have to continuously explain to others that we need to be treated and recognized and to be considered in a certain way. And a few people have actually spoken up against this, about the whole treatment, how we are overlooked and how we're not considered, and how people don't, they're not really, representing us properly. And what they are saying is, come to us and we'll tell you what's appropriate. Now, unfortunately, it's taken a few people that have been activists that have turned around and said, this is not the way we want to be treated. We don't want allyship, which is just a new word. Not that I've created, but the whole thing. But allyship is not an identity. Allyship is a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, accountability with marginalised individuals and groups of people. Allyship is not self-defined. Our work and our efforts must be recognised by the people we seem to ally ourselves with. So there's a whole thing again against allyship as well, because what some people are saying is allyship is not actually working. It's not working for women of colour. Obviously, if you've got any ideas about this, let me know, because this is the first time I've actually realised that this word actually exists. And to me, I didn't know that there was a problem here, because I was too busy looking towards the Windrush situation, which I'm going to come to anyway. But so a lot of people think that it does not help. So when we're talking about marginalised communities, we're talking about people of colour, the LGBT community as well. So it's where these marginalised groups are not being considered properly, and how they, it's sometimes allies can harm that community that they're trying to associate themselves with. So so it's really important how do we get past that? So how can we look at certain situations instead of messing up and creating more problems because we're not looking at PR materials? I mean, a lot of my clients are women of colour, but I have clients that are white. They're not just from the black, West Indian, British, African countries. I have a few Asian clients as well. But when it comes to my one-to-ones, and most of the people that come to use my services are women of colour. When it comes to workshops, you will get a mix, but more and more women of colour are coming and using the service, it's really interesting, because when I first started ages ago within this personal development arena, especially when I was teaching, there was a lot of black students, but my clients were white, because again, it was to do with a lot of black people did not have to spare money to, at the time I was doing massage and healing, so they never used to invest so much, especially in the UK, as much as other races would invest. So that was really an interesting thing. But what was really another interesting and really important thing for us to consider, especially for people that are training in holistic therapy and or people that are coaches, is that what we'll find is that when I was teaching massage, and this looks at this whole device about economics as well. So when I was teaching massage in East London for Newham College, I was teaching a sitting girls, and it was a VTCT award, which was totally different to perhaps an iTech award or from any of the London schools. So those awards were seen as better. So the iTech and the other awards at the time were seen as much better. The game has changed now, but years ago they were seen as much better, more comprehensive, more serious. So I would go along to the beauty shows with my students, and I remember meeting up with a man. He was part of a governing body, and I said, well, my students they're interested, I'm teaching VTCT, I've got that training myself. So it's a vocational charitable trust, which most places do now. And I remember this man saying, oh no, we don't take those people on because it's not, the standards are very low. And at the time, I think actually this might not have even been a beauty show, it might have been Mind, Body and Spirit. At the time I looked and I thought, oh God, oh wow, we're not, the standards are not that good. But what I realised now, it's not that the standards were good or any less than, because your training in whatever discipline you are is as good as a person that teaches you. So you could have somebody that has the curriculum can be really basic in one college compared to a private school. But that teacher that is teaching you will give you above and beyond what is in that curriculum, which was a lot of the time me and my colleagues, we did do this. We gave our students above and beyond what was in the curriculum because we wanted them to be the best. So we didn't just give them the basics, we gave them a lot. And at the time, I was practicing in Portobello Road in a clinic called Bliss. So I was seeing a lot of really good clients. All my industry knowledge, I was giving it back to those people. So it wasn't a luxury of them coming at the weekend, a very expensive school with really good teachers, because they didn't have that money. So they had to go to the community college because they didn't have £1,000 or £2,000 to do a private school with one of the well-known massage schools. They just did not have that money. So within that statement that man made, there was also a class situation going on, because a lot of the women on my course were women that were working class, and a lot of them were single mothers. That was the ratio. So they didn't have the extra money. But what they did have was their dignity, and they really wanted to help their community. And those courses, especially in Newham College, what we did at the time, those women, economically, we helped them. We helped them come up because they was able to work, freelance, they was able to work around their children, their mental state improved, and they had a better view of life. Their diet improved, their health improved. So we actually helped the community flourish in certain areas. But at the time, I didn't realise how much that statement by that guy, he wasn't wrong in some cases, because some places are just not the high standard. But when you look at the people that was attending the private massage schools, which are really good, were the people who had the money and who had a certain amount of privilege. And this is the real truth. Regardless of what we think and what we say and how we can dispute this, 10 years later, from this view, we didn't have career development loans, what we have now. So with a career development loan, you can go to any college or any learning provider now, and you can get the creme de la creme of that training, because you're going to pay it back anyway. But in those days, it was a grant. You got your course funded, but it had to be a local course. So that's what happened. So it was very, very, very class, financial, money, funding. Yeah, it was very specific to that. So the reason I bring that up is because there is a big, massive discrepancy in the personal development field, where there are people of colour. This is another thing that happened. People of colour sometimes are misrepresented or not represented at all, and they're always having to shout this out. Even in the coaching industry, the personal development industry, where there was another massive problem where there was a summit. I think it was online, and there was a whole load of speakers, and there was not one speaker of colour. Now, I'm not sure about native or if there was any other race, but I know there was no one from the black race that was in this summit, and these people got called out yet again. And again, there were some speakers that were well known that when they was called out and said, look, why are you participating in this after you have spoken about allyship? And again, it was met by a funny, or the term was used, gaslighting. It's not my term. The person gaslighted the people that asked. So if you can see how there's a certain pattern happening. So people are maybe online are doing things, they're advertising, or they're misrepresenting a massive portion of the community who buy their books, buy their courses, buy their services at a place now because they've got extra additional income. They go to these people and they see them as their mentors. And what's happening is these people are not seeing themselves reflected or considered. Now, I would like to hear maybe some feedback from people from both races to say, what do you think the problem could be? Because I would really love to have a proper dialogue with a group of women so we can sit down and discuss this. Because it may be the case where these people genuinely, I'm just saying as devil's advocate, they thought they'd put a poke. No, actually, one of the images, no way. So, for me anyway. But in some cases, maybe people try to do this in everyday life. I'll use that as an example. They try to do the best thing. They try to consider people of colour. They try to really read up and look up things that are happening in the community. They really get active. And is this seen as, are you seen as being helpful, or are you seen as being culturally inappropriate by some people? Because remember, you're not going to please everybody, but you're going to please some people. It's like, as a black woman, yes, I can demand that people treat me a certain way, but then I have to make sure or ensure that I'm treating somebody from the lesbian or gay community or the bi community in a certain way. So then I need to, again, look at myself and think, how am I excluding? How am I excluding people from that community? If so at all, how am I excluding? So what is it? Is there any holes in, my thought pattern? I mean, I teach about this all the time, and the situations that come up. I mean, people are more understanding. The people I've come across, maybe they just say it because it's a course, but I actually do feel we have a really strong dialogue around this. But what is it we need? What needs to be done? Where, in terms of representation, what needs to be done, and in terms of advertising, because again, you know, we need to be represented in a much better way, because a lot of advertising is aimed at people of colour. It's aimed at, I would say, but I still do not see enough representation. When I do watch telly or in the media, there's a lot of representation, but it's not the representation that perhaps we want. And maybe that's why social media is becoming so strong, because we're no longer turning to mainstream. But what can be done, I mean, in terms of activism, those of you that are the really strong activists, what do we need to do to keep ensuring that we are heard, articulate, in an articulate way, rather than us coming across as being angry? Or is that again a construct to gaslight us, to maybe stop us using our voice? So what is it we need to do? What is it we need to do to encourage a dialogue, or for us to be able to speak up, but to speak up in a way that people who are not from our community can understand and not feel threatened to respond, and also the ones that are the perpetrators of such hideous behaviours are accountable. So, what is it we need to do? I think, for one, there needs to be lots of discussions around this, honest discussions, and for us to probably identify what we as black women and what we as white women, what we as Asian women, what is it that we find acceptable in our day-to-day. So maybe we need to identify what's appropriate. Because we say, oh, that's not right, they're doing this, they're saying this. But actually, when somebody comes back with a very clever clapback or a gaslighting way, or they're not accountable, they're not transparent, because we don't know the language, we may pass up on it, or we may be so angry, we may miss the point that they're trying to make. So the communication is totally broke down. So it's about being transparent. How can we have that transparent dialogue? And I think the first stage I think we need to do as black women is to understand what is acceptable for us, what is our rights. Because again, I don't want to know about Facebook or Instagram activists that are just typing really good words, but they're not doing nothing in the community, or they're not being around people outside of social media and having these dialogues. I want to hear from the people that really do this. Now, I do know a few people that are really strong on this, and those are the people I will be asking maybe to come and speak with me about this, because I think this is really important. But I do want to hear from people that can just point me in a direction so I can make a part 2 of this. The other type of activism, my nose is getting blocked up, sorry, I'm not getting emotional. The Windrush situation, most of you will know by now how I think the government has said that they'd burnt a lot of the old papers for the people that came here on the Windrush, and a lot of the elderly people who didn't apply for right of stay in this country had to go back. And there was a few people that were going to be, and some of them may still be deported because they've been in this country for a certain period of time, but they've surpassed their right of stay, or some people have just never had a passport. Mjfontaine, my mum, always, when she came here, she made sure she got her passport and her papers, because she was invited here, like most people's parents. My dad, he did the same thing. My sister's done it as well. So my mum was always on that sort of thing. But not everybody's parents had that same situation. Plus, my mum and dad always went back to the West Indies to visit family, and just to go back and reconnect with their land. So that happened. So there was there was a lot of people picketing and people marching and protesting. And I went to the the protest in Brixton, Windrush Square, and saw a lot of speakers there. Diane Abbott done an amazing speech, and it's on my Facebook. It was really, really good. And some other MPs that I would list down, and sorry, it was a really lovely turnout, but it could have been much more bigger. It could have been twice as much people that could have been at that event. I was surprised, me and a friend, when we actually went down. And again, the people that were, there was a good number of black people, but I mean, this is good as well, but it could have been better. A lot of white people protested against this stuff. A lot of older white people, which really touched me, because, they've seen people come here, help, work. Some of their friends have died. Some of their friends are still alive. So it was really beautiful to see the elderly people out with their placards and protesting. And to me, it really just opened my heart. But it also made my heart heavy. But the fact that we protested so much and people was just not having it. There's other debates that people are saying as well, that was it all done purposely? Got elections coming up, who knows? I don't know. But all I know is that those people did suffer, and there's still people that are still suffering because of this. But again, if it wasn't for our activists and our MPs that stood firm, and people were protesting and was really exercising their right to speak and to protest and to actively engage with, with everybody and say, we're not having this. This cannot happen. At one point, I felt powerless as a human being. I felt powerless as a second generation woman. Even though my parents, luckily, are in the West Indies, but they still come here, I still felt a sense of powerlessness, because as much as I'm born in this country, I'm starting to feel that I'm not a British citizen. Or did I ever feel like that? That's a debatable thing as well. But there's just a way things are that is really making me feel uneasy. And it was, for me, it was like, if they're going to send, these are the backbone of our community, our elders. They're holding so much stories because they came to help rebuild this country. If they're going to send these people home, what do we have? Because my age group, we're not ready to be elders. We're still trying to sort through a lot of the mental and emotional surplus that our parents had to give to us, because they didn't have time to process mental and emotional post-traumatic slavery or anything like that. And this goes for the people that have Irish descent, Jewish, all the other people as well. We are the generation that are processing a lot of emotional stuff, intergenerational stuff. So we're not ready. We've not settled into our eldership seat yet, because we are still kids mentally, most of us. So it was a really uneasy time for me. I really felt that sort of destabilization. And I think what it is the fact that we're no longer being activists in terms of movement. We are more armchair activists, because we can write a brilliant paragraph on Facebook or on Instagram. But then when it comes to it on a Friday, there's a lot of people that are in the community. They're ridiculously always out doing their work. They're making people, they're informing people. But Windrush Square should have been packed. It should have been more packed than the message boards on Facebook. It should have been packed with people. It was a beautiful day. For 2 hours, everybody should have literally got up. It should be. I don't like saying should, but I really feel that this was important, and I think that is part of our healing. That is part of our emotional healing, because the more we become activists, and this activism is really key for a lot of healers. If you look at the healers throughout history, and the healers, black or white, around the world, they tend to move into activism in their crone years. So once they're reaching a time in their life, passing 45, 50, if they may not have been that active, in the community, they tend to turn back to that. There's something about giving back, both men and women as well. And it's that thing that we naturally turn to our community. But one of the threads that feed our veins is justice and fairness. It's ma'at. It's about balance. And it's really important for our mental health. We don't have to be imbalanced and be a strong activist. But I do believe the protest we still need to have that fire in us, and to protest and to be able to actively engage and say, I stand for this. Because by doing that, it enables us to have the fire for us to keep going. And your activism doesn't have to be every single day going to Indra Square or going to a march, because that's another thing. But it's the awareness that you're giving. It's coming through your work. If you writing, what part of your writing is informing your own experience? I'm an artist, and I'm getting that call again. It tends to come in my collage work more than my paintings. But again, after visiting and seeing artist Faith Ringgold in the Tate, and her speaking about her lifelong artwork and quilts, and the activism being, going through the civil rights, and then moving through different stages of her career, how much she said, if your art is not speaking about your experience, then, you're losing. I mean, this is not her words verbatim, but, you're losing a lot of your power as an artist. So for me, I really want my experience of the past year and observing what's happening with our elders to be informed in my artwork, my art. Get it? My art. So somebody else could be a dancer, somebody else could make clothes. What is it about you when you're making those clothes that's informing you? Another person has a business, they're teaching people. What is it about the work you do? Does your logo represent you? Is there any practices that you can put within your work that can reinform the culture of that person, regardless of what culture they come from? You always take it back to the person's traditions, or you always have a sense of activism in your life. It's about rights. It's not about excluding one group over the other. It's about balance, and it's about rights. We've seen too much of the scales being tilted for too many marginalized communities and groups of people, and we need to increase the activism on one way or the other, just so we can try and rebalance those scales. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. It's quite political, but not. I hope you can dissect the parts of it that apply to you. Don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe and rate this podcast on iTunes. It would really, really, really help me. And if you want to support the show, you can join my Patreon page, or you can join my mailing list. And again, if any of the issues come up, just drop me an inbox and just let me know how you felt that this podcast went, or if there's anybody that who can who'd like to appear on this show in terms of the activism and what we can do as a way of healing our communities. This is Mjfontaine signing off. Have a great day. Have a great May.